What's the most shocking secret you've ever learned about your own family? My whole life, I felt a bit different, always a slight outsider in family gatherings. My cousins, especially, seemed to have an unspoken bond that I just wasn't privy to. I always attributed it to being the youngest, or just a quiet kid. Then, last year, my grandmother, on her deathbed, dropped a bombshell. Turns out my aunt and uncle are my biological parents. My actual parents, who raised me, couldn't have kids. They adopted me within the family to keep it quiet and avoid scandal. Mind absolutely blown. My dad was always the quiet, dependable type, working his accounting job, home by 6. He'd never discussed his younger years much beyond college, and then I met your mom. One day, going through old photos, I found a stack of flyers for a punk band from the late 80s. The lead singer? A guy with wild blue hair and piercings who was undeniably my dad. He apparently toured for years, playing dive bars, before settling down. His current colleagues would never believe it. My grandpa was the sweetest, most unassuming man, known for his garden and quiet disposition. He never talked about his time in the war, just did my duty. After he passed, we were cleaning out his dusty attic. Tucked away in an old trunk, beneath moth-eaten uniforms, we found a box. Inside were 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, and a Medal of Honor Commendation for single-handedly disabling an enemy position during a pivotal battle in Vietnam. He was a hero and never spoke a single word of it. We grew up incredibly frugal. Secondhand clothes, budget holidays, parents constantly stressing about bills. I honestly thought we were perpetually on the brink of financial disaster. Then, my grandmother passed away and we went through her affairs. Turns out, she owned a significant portion of farmland and several rental properties she'd been collecting income from for decades. She died a multimillionaire, and my struggling parents were receiving a tidy, some monthly, just choosing to live like paupers. My older brother always looked strikingly like our Uncle Dave, even more so than our own dad. We used to joke about it at family gatherings. Last Christmas, we all decided to do one of those Ancestry DNA kits for fun. The results came back. My brother's genetic profile didn't match our dad. His biological father was indeed Uncle Dave. My mom had an affair many years ago, and my brother was the product. That Christmas dinner was very, very quiet. My great-great-aunt Martha was revered in our family as a saintly, community-minded woman. Never married, dedicated her life to charity. We had her portrait prominently displayed. Digging through old county archives for a genealogy project, I stumbled upon a newspaper clipping from the 1920s. Local woman jailed for bootlegging ring. There was a photo of a much younger Martha, looking defiant. She'd run a massive Prohibition-era operation, served time, and then completely reinvented her identity in life. Wildest thing ever. Our family always prided ourselves on our strong, undeniable Irish heritage from County Galway. Every St. Patrick's Day was an explosion of green. My grandmother spoke with a slight accent that she swore was just a thick Galway brogue. I did a DNA test out of curiosity. Turns out, we're about 10% Irish. The overwhelming majority? Eastern European Ashkenazi Jewish. My great-grandparents completely fabricated their backstory when they immigrated after World War II to escape persecution. They maintained the lie for generations. My cousin Maria disappeared when she was 17. The family was heartbroken, spent years searching, presumed the worst. It was a huge, unspoken tragedy. Then about 10 years ago, I was flipping channels and saw a local news story about a woman who had successfully started an animal rescue shelter in a town 2 states away. Her face was eerily familiar. It was Maria. She had a new name, a new family, and claimed to have no memory of her past. She simply chose a new life. My grandmother was always incredibly tight-lipped about her childhood, just saying it was complicated. After she passed, we cleared out her attic. Tucked away in a dusty old chest, I found a worn leather journal. It wasn't hers, but her mother's. Inside, meticulous entries detailing their family's harrowing escape from Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution, posing as a completely different family to cross borders. My ancestors weren't just immigrants. They were refugees who fabricated an entire new identity, right down to their names, to survive. I got one of those DNA test kits for Christmas. Mostly did it for fun, expecting a bland report. What I got instead was a huge percentage of Ashkenazi Jewish heritage, which baffled my very Irish Catholic family. Turns out, my paternal grandfather, a man I idolized, was not only Jewish, but had completely disowned his family and faith after World War II, moving across the country and fabricating a new life. He never spoke a word of it, marrying my grandmother under his assumed identity. A whole secret life, wiped clean. My aunt, a devout woman, always spoke with a strange reverence about a lost period in her youth, like a gap year no one discussed. After she had a stroke, going through her old effects, I found a box of newspaper clippings. These weren't from our quiet town. They were from San Francisco, circa 1968. Activist arrested, protester leads sit-in. My demure aunt wasn't just away during her youth. She was a radical hippie leader, completely defying the conservative image she'd projected for 50 years. Our family house always had this locked room upstairs. Mom said it was storage, but no one ever went in. After my great-aunt died, the only person with a key, we finally opened it. It wasn't storage. It was a perfectly preserved 1950s living room, untouched, and in a photo album, pictures of my great-aunt with another woman, clearly more than friends. Turns out, our family kept her partner a complete secret for decades, refusing to acknowledge their relationship, even after her death. The room was their sanctuary. We owned a beautiful old lake house, passed down generations. My dad always said it was a quiet family retreat. A few years ago, going through old deeds, I found a clause from the 1920s stating the property could only be sold back to the Johnson Family Holdings, LLC. I looked it up. The Johnson family was a notorious bootlegging syndicate during Prohibition. My great-grandparents weren't just modest entrepreneurs. They were running a sophisticated liquor operation right out of our idyllic lakefront property. My parents always preached strict honesty. Imagine my shock when, helping them sort tax documents, I stumbled upon old immigration papers for my grandfather. His birth date was off by 6 years, and his listed birthplace wasn't a village in Italy, but a larger city nearby. After some digging, it turned out he'd been too young to enlist in World War II when he wanted to, so he lied about his age and forged documents to join. He was a war hero, but also a lifelong fibber about his own birthday. Never word of it. Growing up, we always had this eerie portrait in the living room, a somber-looking woman no one talked about. My mom just said she was a distant relative who had a difficult life. Years later, researching our genealogy, I found her name in local archives. She was institutionalized for hysteria and died there, never leaving. My family, ashamed of mental illness, simply ghosted her from our history, hanging her portrait like a silent warning not to speak of the unpleasant. The portrait wasn't a memory, it was a tombstone. My family lived paycheck to paycheck, always struggling. Then my eccentric great-uncle, a recluse, passed away. We assumed he had nothing, maybe a few dusty books. Instead, his lawyer contacted us. He wasn't poor at all. He was incredibly wealthy, having secretly invested in early tech startups decades ago. He left everything to us, provided we kept his financial success a secret from those gold-digging distant cousins. Our entire perception of him and our own financial future was flipped overnight. My grandmother always dismissed any talk of our family history before they immigrated, just simple farmers, nothing interesting. When I got into genealogy, I found records of an incredibly prominent, wealthy American industrialist family with our exact last name, same region, same time. Digging deeper, I discovered a specific branch had been disowned from marrying below their station, right before my great-grandparents left. Grandma wasn't dismissing history. She was expertly burying a scandal that essentially cost us generations of immense wealth and status. After my grandpa passed, I helped my dad clean out his cluttered attic. Tucked beneath some loose floorboards, I found a small, unmarked photo album. Inside were pictures of my grandpa, much younger, with a beautiful woman I'd never seen, and 2 kids who looked strikingly like my dad's much older cousins. The dates showed he had a complete, established family for nearly 10 years before he even met my grandmother. He just packed up and started a brand new one without a trace, a few towns over. My parents constantly struggled financially, always complaining about bills while we lived in a tiny rental. They'd always say, "We wish we could leave you something, but there's nothing." After my dad died, my mom was going through his old papers and found a deed. Turns out he secretly owned the small corner grocery store my uncle had been running for decades. Dad never charged rent, let my uncle keep all the profits. He kept it completely silent, sacrificing our family's comfort to keep his struggling brother afloat. My great-aunt Susan was an enigma. The family just said she was troubled and went to Canada decades ago. Nobody had heard from her since. Last year, my mom got a cryptic call from a hospital here in our state. They'd located Aunt Susan. Turns out, she never left the country. She'd been living under a different name, just 2 towns away, in a state asylum for the criminally insane. She wasn't just troubled, she was institutionalized after a violent incident the family somehow managed to completely suppress for over 50 years. My grandfather was the definition of a pillar of the community, stern, devout, a respected bank manager for 40 years. Everyone knew him as scrupulously honest. At his funeral, a well-dressed, much younger man approached me, introducing himself as a retired FBI agent. He told me my grandfather, the honest banker, had spent the last 15 years of his career secretly working as a key informant, meticulously documenting and helping take down a major organized crime syndicate laundering money right through his bank. He risked everything quietly. My mom always had an intense, almost obsessive protectiveness over my older sister. We just assumed it was a first-child thing. They were incredibly close, sometimes to the exclusion of me. A few years ago, my sister needed a rare blood transfusion. Neither parent was a match. The doctor, sensing panic, pulled them aside. Later, my mom confessed through tears. My sister wasn't her biological child. She was actually the daughter of my mom's younger sister, who died tragically young. My mom adopted her in secret, weeks after her own wedding, to keep her out of foster care. My quiet, unassuming grandfather rarely spoke about his World War II service. He'd just brush it off, saying he was mostly pushing papers as a clerk. After he passed, sorting through his old footlocker, we found a hidden box of medals and official military citations. He wasn't a clerk. He was a highly decorated combat engineer, awarded the Silver Star for single-handedly disarming a massive, unexploded bomb under heavy fire, saving an entire company. He carried the trauma of what he did, not the glory of it, in silence his whole life. My great-grandparents' old farmhouse was a labyrinth of nooks and crannies. While renovating, we discovered a hidden compartment behind a loose brick in the old fireplace. Inside, a small, leather-bound journal. It detailed how, during Prohibition, their seemingly quiet dairy farm was a major hub for bootlegging operations. My great-grandma, this tiny, demure woman, was apparently the mastermind, coordinating deliveries and bribing local officials. Her award-winning recipes weren't just for pies. They were for exceptionally potent moonshine. My mom always mentioned her cousin, Susan, who was given up for adoption as a baby in the 60s. A sad, closed chapter. Then, during a family reunion a few years ago, my eccentric great-aunt Martha started acting weird, repeatedly looking at one of my other cousins, Jane. Finally, after a few too many cocktails, Martha blurted out that Jane was actually Susan. My aunt had raised her own sister's baby as her own, to save face for my grandmother. Jane had no idea. My dad's name is John Smith, seriously. Super common. I always teased him about it. Years ago, while digitizing old family photos, I found a box of his childhood report cards and a faded birth certificate. They were all for a Jonas Smirnov. My dad, born to Russian immigrant parents, changed his entire identity in his early 20s, completely cutting off his birth name, heritage, and extended family to escape a violent mob-affiliated uncle. He literally just reinvented himself. My stoic grandmother, bless her heart, passed away last year. She always wore this simple gold locket she refused to open for anyone. When we were clearing her things, my mom finally managed to pry it open. Inside wasn't a photo of my grandpa, but a tiny, very old picture of a different man and a baby, along with a faded marriage certificate. It was from 5 years before she met my grandfather. She had an entire first marriage and child that no one, not even my mom, ever knew about. My family owned this sprawling, run-down farm for generations. Always thought we were on shaky legal ground because of a dispute years ago. Then a property developer showed up, claiming he owned it, with irrefutable deeds from the 1950s. Turns out, our great-great-uncle Frank, who vanished without a trace back then, secretly sold the entire 200 acres for a pittance to move to California. Our family had been living on land we didn't own for over 70 years. My eccentric great-aunt, who collected everything from thimbles to taxidermy squirrels, had this hideous, lumpy clay pot on her mantle. She insisted it was ancient and magical. After her passing, a friend of mine, an archaeology student, saw it while helping us clean out her house. His jaw hit the floor. It wasn't magical, but it was incredibly ancient. A priceless pre-Incan burial urn identified as stolen from a museum in Peru back in the 70s. Aunt Betty was an international art thief, apparently. My dad always had this bizarre party trick of telling a funny story about how he was almost swapped at birth with another baby at the hospital. He'd laugh it off as a close call. I recently overheard him on a serious phone call with my grandpa. Dad was saying, "Seriously, remember that mix-up? We really did take home the wrong baby for 3 days." It wasn't a joke. He was actually with another family for 72 hours. Wild.